The conflict between Hamas and Israel is a complex issue that garners significant international attention. Beyond the casualties and the actions of Israel in the Gaza Strip, the stance of Islamic countries towards the conflict is also a critical aspect. It's notable that these countries are divided in their response to the situation. The Riyadh Summit of 2023, which brought together Islamic countries from the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, clearly demonstrated the differing positions of these nations. At this high-level conference held on November 11th, a proposal was formulated by Iran's president outlining 5 specific sanctions to be imposed against Israel. These included: 1. Preventing the use of U.S. military equipment in the Middle East by Israel. 2. Freezing diplomatic and economic contacts with Israel. 3. Banning oil trade with Israel. 4. Prohibiting flights to and from Israel from passing through the airspace of Islamic countries. 5. Sending delegations to the United States, Europe, and Russia. These proposed sanctions were intended to pressure Israel into agreeing to a full ceasefire that would bring peace to Palestine. However, 9 countries rejected these sanction proposals: Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Egypt, Bahrain, Morocco, Mauritania, Djibouti, and Sudan. The inclusion of Sudan in the list of countries refusing to impose sanctions on Israel is particularly interesting, given its history of advocating for Palestinian independence. Sudan's relationship with Palestine has been notably close, even symbolized by the similar designs and colors of their national flags. As a supporter of Palestinian independence, Sudan has previously imposed significant sanctions on Israel since 1958. Under its laws, Sudan prohibited establishing relations with Israel, banned business with Israeli citizens, and forbade business dealings with Israeli companies or companies with Israeli interests. The legislation also included a ban on the direct or indirect import of Israeli goods. Additionally, Sudan participated in the Six-Day War against Israel in 1967. These actions clearly demonstrate Sudan's strong relationship and solidarity with Palestine. In 1969, Sudan began relations with the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, further showcasing its support for Palestinian independence. Then, on November 15, 1988, when Palestine declared its independence, Sudan was among the first countries to elevate diplomatic relations. Sudan even provided space for a Palestinian embassy to be built in the country. Their relationship continued smoothly. In 2017, Sudan and the Palestinian government signed 18 memoranda of understanding covering various areas such as trade, security, health, culture, and more. As a strong ally of Palestine, Sudan has also been a destination for Palestinians, whether for work or education. Given Sudan's strong ties with Palestine and its historical condemnation of Israel, many would expect Sudan not to align with Israel. However, surprisingly, in 2016, Sudan began the process of normalizing relations with Israel through the United States government. During this period, Ibrahim Gandour, the foreign minister of Sudan, stated that Sudan would normalize relations with Israel if the United States agreed to lift the sanctions imposed on Sudan. This shift in Sudan's foreign policy marked a significant change in its long-standing stance towards Israel and reflected the complex geopolitical dynamics involving the United States. The move was seen as part of a broader trend in the region, where several Arab nations were reconsidering their relations with Israel, often with the mediation or influence of the United States. Sudan has indeed faced multiple sanctions from the United States over the years. The first significant sanction was imposed on August 12, 1993, when Sudan was accused by the U.S. of being a state sponsor of terrorism. This accusation led to the bombing of the Al-Shifa Pharmaceutical Company's factory by the U.S., as it was alleged to be a site where Al-Qaeda was manufacturing chemical weapons. Further sanctions were imposed in 2007 when Sudan was reported to be committing genocide in the Darfur region of Western Sudan. These various sanctions severely destabilized Sudan's economy. In fact, 2 years after the 2007 sanctions, Sudan experienced a severe poverty crisis, with 15.6 million of its population, or 46.5% of Sudan's total population, living in poverty. Given these dire circumstances, Sudan chose to follow the U.S. demands in exchange for the lifting of sanctions. One of these demands was the normalization of relations between Sudan and Israel. After the 2016 developments, the normalization between Sudan and Israel became more evident in 2020. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Sudanese Sovereign Council head Abdel Fattah al-Burhan met in Uganda and agreed to normalize relations. This continued into 2021, when Sudan signed a declaration to normalize relations with Israel. Following this, Sudan was removed from the list of state sponsors of terrorism, and the 1958 law boycotting Israel was repealed, allowing Israel to engage in trade and services in Sudan. With the signing of this agreement, Sudan also received significant financial privileges from the United States, including settling its arrears with the World Bank and enabling annual access to loans worth up to $1 billion, or about 15 trillion Indonesian rupiah. This decision, of course, elicited responses from various parties, reflecting the complex interplay of international relations and the shifting dynamics in Middle Eastern politics. The normalization of relations between Sudan and Israel was indeed met with mixed reactions. Countries like Canada, Germany, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Bahrain welcomed this move. However, Iran and Hamas, along with some Islamic scholars in Sudan, expressed disapproval. In Sudan, some Islamic scholars even issued a fatwa rejecting the normalization between Sudan and Israel. This stance is significant, considering that 97% of Sudan's population is Muslim, many of whom sympathize with Palestine. Despite this, Sudan's heavy dependence on the United States influenced its decision to normalize relations with Israel. Sudan's reliance on the United States is not only economic but also related to internal security. Sudan has been plagued by conflict since its independence in 1956, experiencing at least 2 civil wars and 2 military coups. In 2011, Sudan lost part of its territory when South Sudan declared its independence, significantly reducing Sudan's geographical size. Furthermore, Sudan lost substantial oil reserves located in South Sudan, which held the 3rd largest oil reserves in Africa, with an estimated production capacity of 3.5 billion barrels per year. Adding to these challenges, Sudan faced another civil war in 2023, which began in April. This conflict broke out between the Sudanese military, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the paramilitary organization Rapid Support Force, led by Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo. This internal strife reflects Sudan's ongoing struggle with political stability and economic hardships. In this latest civil war conflict, both Israel and the United States have taken action. As a new partner, Israel, through Mossad and its Ministry of Foreign Affairs, met with both parties on April 16, 2023, in an attempt to mediate. But these efforts have not yet led to a resolution. In addition to Israel, the United States and Saudi Arabia have also summoned both parties to Jeddah in hopes of facilitating a ceasefire. The U.S. even threatened Sudan with sanctions if the civil war did not cease. But as of now, the conflict continues. It's worth noting that in 2021, the U.S. successfully thwarted a military coup in Sudan by withholding aid worth $700 million, approximately 10.8 trillion Indonesian rupiah. With its role in preventing the coup, the Sudanese government undoubtedly hopes that the U.S. can help resolve the ongoing conflict in Sudan. Considering Sudan's current conflict-ridden situation and its dependence on the U.S., it's less surprising to see Sudan's reluctance to impose sanctions on Israel. This stance reflects the complexities of international relations and the interplay of geopolitical interests, where national priorities and alliances can significantly influence a country's foreign policy decisions.